Welcome back to History Otherwise, where we explore the paths not taken in history.
Hmm.
Today, we're going back to a moment that feels so recent. It's the early hours of Friday, the 19th of September, 2014. We're at the Royal Highland Centre, just outside Edinburgh.
And you can just feel it, can't you? The air is thick with caffeine and nerves and, the weight of centuries of history.
It really is one of those moments in our timeline, the one we all lived through. The Chief Counting Officer, Mary Pitcaithley, she steps up and announces victory for Better Together.
Yeah, 55.3% to 44.7%. The union holds, Alex Salmon resigns, and, well, history moves on.
But that's not the path we're taking today. In this deep dive, we're looking at what happens when the results from, say, Glasgow and a few others just tip the other way.
Just enough. The final result in this timeline is 51.2%. Yes, 48.8%. No.
A narrow win, but it's a win. So what does that actually mean?
Well, that's the thing. To get a real handle on the scale of it, I think we need to break this down into three parts. First, there's the immediate political earthquake. And the funny thing is, the epicenter wasn't in Edinburgh. It was London.
Right. And then second,
Then you get the brutal reality. We're calling it the divorce from hell, the economic and military untangling of two countries.
and finally, you mentioned a great reversal.
Exactly. The great irony of it all. How Scotland leaving the UK completely flips the rest of the country's relationship with Europe.
That's a huge twist.
It is. And I think, the tone we need to take here is it's not about celebration or blame. It's that sort of understated British analysis. This isn't just a flag changing. It's the entire geopolitical map of the North Atlantic being redrawn.
Okay, so let's start there. The numbers drop. In our world, David Cameron is, purring down the phone to the Queen in this timeline.
Absolute deafening silence in Downing Street. While you've got George Square in Glasgow just erupting in a sea of saltires, number 10 is watching a 307-year-old state dissolve in real time.
And Cameron, he has to face the cameras.
He does. He's got this family of nations speech prepared for a no vote in his pocket. He has to throw that away and go out and admit that the United Kingdom, as we've known it since 1707, is over.
He can't possibly stay on as prime minister after that.
Impossible. He's gone, almost immediately. He becomes the prime minister who lost the country. But the crisis, it's so much deeper than just one man.
The Conservative Party itself must be in chaos.
It lurches into a crisis. The whole one nation Tory ideal, the moderate wing, it's instantly discredited because the one nation just broke.
Yeah.
So the party pivots hard to a much more English-centric right-wing position.
And this is when we start hearing that new jargon, right? The RUK.
Yes, the remnant UK, or if you were a civil servant, the slightly grim acronym EWNI, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It sounds so clunky.
It reflects the identity crisis. And it means the English question just explodes onto the scene.
Which is, just to remind everyone, who actually speaks for England.
Exactly. For centuries, Westminster just sort of did it by default. But now, with Scottish MPs leaving, is it an English parliament? The old sticking plaster ideas like English votes for English laws, they just don't work anymore. There's a constitutional vacuum.
And it's not just the Tories. Labour gets hit just as hard, maybe harder.
It's an amputation. In 2014, Labour had 41 seats in Scotland. That was their firewall, Without those, the maths for winning a majority government in Westminster, it just disappears. They are locked out of power for a generation.
So you have a power vacuum in London right at the moment you need the strongest possible leadership.
At the worst possible time, which takes us straight into part two.
The divorce from hell.
The Scottish government had published this enormous white paper, Scotland's Future.
Right, I remember that. It painted a very rosy picture, a smooth 18-month transition.
It was.
Yeah.
Let's call it an optimistic document. It assumed a huge amount of goodwill on both sides. But the second that yes vote is confirmed, that goodwill just evaporates.
And it all comes down to the details.
It comes down to the 3 Ds: debt, defense, and the division of assets. And the economic reality bites hard and fast.
Let's start with the oil, because that was the foundation of the whole economic argument.
It was. The white paper assumed oil prices would be around, I think, $113 a barrel. That was the cushion. But if you look at what actually happened to the markets in late 2014 into 2015,
It didn't just dip, it crashed.
it crashed under $40 a barrel.
Wow. That's not just a small miscalculation.
That is a fiscal black hole opening up under a brand new state budget. Billions in projected revenue, just gone. So the new Scottish government, instead of delivering this promised land, has to impose deep austerity from day one.
But the psychology must be different, right? It's our austerity for our new country.
It's framed as a national sacrifice, absolutely. But that doesn't help with the other big economic problem, the currency.
We want to keep the pound, a currency union.
And the UK government, now led by a much harder-line Tory PM, says absolutely not. No way are we sharing our currency with a foreign state that just left us. We are not underwriting their budget.
And this is what triggers the digital bank run. Can you unpack that? It's not people queuing outside Northern Rock.
No, this is 21st century. It happens at the speed of light. Imagine you're at home, your savings are in a Scottish bank. You're terrified that on day one, your British pounds are going to be forcibly converted into new devalued Scottish pounds. What do?
I'm on my banking app, and I am moving every penny to an account in London. Immediately.
Exactly. And so are millions of other people and businesses. We're talking billions in capital flight in days. Companies like RBS, Standard Life, they just activate their contingency plans and move their legal headquarters south. It's an economic hemorrhage.
So a total economic mess. But there's a security side to this that feels almost more dangerous. Trident.
This is the single most toxic part of the whole negotiation. The UK's entire nuclear deterrent is based at Faslane, on the Clyde.
And the SNP's position was crystal clear.
Non-negotiable. A nuclear-free Scotland. They wanted the submarines gone by 2020.
But there's nowhere else for them to go, is there?
That's the Mobius nightmare. You can't just park these things. Devonport is too near a city. Building a new base from scratch would cost billions and take over a decade.
So you have this immovable object meeting an unstoppable force.
Precisely. And the rest of the world is watching. The US, NATO, they are deeply alarmed. The RUK's permanent seat on the UN Security Council is suddenly at risk because that's tied to being a nuclear power.
Wow, it just shows how deeply woven together everything was.
Unpicking 300 years isn't just drawing a line on a map. It's messy, it's expensive, and it gets very, very ugly.
Okay, so let's move to that third act because this is where the story gets so counterintuitive. The Great Reversal. In our history, 2016 means one thing, Brexit. The UK votes to leave the European Union.
But in this alternate timeline, the result is the complete opposite. The RUK votes to remain in the EU, and pretty comfortably, about 55 to 45%.
Hang on, so losing Scotland makes the rest of the UK more pro-European. That feels backwards. Surely the English nationalism that drove Brexit would be even stronger.
It seems it. But think about the national psychology. The RUK has just gone through the trauma of losing a third of its landmass, a core part of its identity, the appetite for another huge constitutional rupture. It's just not there.
They just don't want to rock the boat again.
Exactly. The Leave campaign in our world had this sort of buccaneering confidence. We're Britain, we can go it alone. And this timeline, that confidence is shattered. The country feels smaller, more vulnerable.
And they have a live fire example of what leaving a union looks like right on their doorstep.
That's the killer point. Project Fear isn't a theory anymore. The voters can see the economic chaos, the border friction, the currency arguments happening just north of Carlisle. They look at Scotland and think, no, thank you. We'll pass on doing that with Europe.
So the whole slogan changes from take back control to what?
Steady the ship. England votes for stability, and that means staying in the EU.
Meanwhile, Scotland is trying to get back in.
Yes. And after some initial worries about Spain maybe vetoing them, it happened surprisingly quickly. They use a legal argument called sub-state succession.
Which means?
Essentially, they argue that since they were already following all EU laws as part of the UK, they don't need to join the queue from scratch. They just need to formalize their own seat at the table.
So you get this strange picture, Scotland with its blue banner and yellow stars looking to Brussels, while the RUK is looking inward, but still in the club.
And that dynamic, that split, creates a domino effect across the rest of the Isles.
Starting with Wales.
The psychological barrier is just gone. Welsh independence, which always seemed like a fringe idea, suddenly becomes a mainstream debate. Plaid Cymru surges in the polls. The RUK government panics and starts offering Devomax to try and keep them in the tent. But the genie is out of the bottle.
And Northern Ireland. That feels incredibly volatile.
Oh, it is. The entire foundation of unionism is the permanence of the union. And that's just been proven to be false.
The union isn't permanent.
It isn't. So Sinn Féin's argument for a border poll becomes devastatingly simple. The union is over. Why would you stay tied to a diminished England when you can join a unified Ireland inside the European Union?
It's a very powerful argument in that new context.
And it's not just politics. You get a physical border. Customs posts start going up at Gretna and Berwick-upon-Tweed.
The idea of a checkpoint at Gretna Green? That's just wild.
But it happens. The 300-year-old free trade zone is over. Supply chains get tangled. It fundamentally changes the feeling of the island.
It bleeds into the culture, too. The BBC, for
So
instance.
BBC splits. You get the SBC, the Scottish Broadcasting Corporation up north. The remnant BBC becomes by default more Anglo-centric. The shared cultural space shrinks.
And Team GB at the Olympics?
Gone. You have Team Scotland marching out separately, and Team RUK. They can't even agree on a name or a flag. It's a rolling identity crisis played out on the world stage.
Even the monarchy gets dragged in. The plan was to keep the Queen, wasn't it?
A personal union, yes. It sounds nice, very traditional. But in practice, it's a constitutional nightmare. What happens when the Queen's Scottish ministers advise her to do one thing and her UK ministers advise the opposite?
She's completely stuck.
Completely. And you have a Governor-General in Edinburgh who, every time they speak, is seen as interference from London. It just inevitably pushes Scotland towards republicanism.
So when we pull back and look at the two timelines, our real one is this simmering, unresolved tension, Brexit paralysis.
It's a country stuck in an unhappy marriage. Yeah. Endlessly arguing about the same things.
Whereas this alternate timeline is a clean but very painful break.
It's traumatic. There's austerity, anger, real economic pain. But after the first decade or so, you get clarity.
What kind of clarity?
You end up with something that looks a bit like a Nordic model for the British Isles. You have separate sovereign nations, Scotland, a newly federated England and Wales, maybe United Ireland, cooperating as equals. They're neighbors, not resentful flatmates.
And it forces England to finally answer that English question.
It does. It has to figure out what it is, on its own terms, for the first time in centuries.
It's a fascinating thought. We always see the dissolution of a country as a failure, a tragedy. But in this alternate reality, was the breakup actually the only way to solve these constitutional questions for good?
It poses the question, doesn't it? Perhaps the United Kingdom was the historical anomaly, and this painful divorce was just history correcting its course.
A huge idea to finish on. The thought that the path not taken was maybe the more natural one all along.
It makes you question what we value more, a tense unity or a clear separation.
Thank you for walking us through that. It certainly makes you look at the map very differently. To our listener, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the history that almost was. Until next time, keep looking for the paths not taken.